Hello, this is Jeff Byers. Welcome back. This is ANE 235, and this is Module 8, and we are on Part 3. And this is where we're at. We just finished cutting all of our UVs, and I showed you how to do all that. And one of the things we need to discuss now that once the UVs are cut, we're going to go ahead and we need to duplicate this character. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull these out real quick. I know I would say most of you, 99% of you, know how to UV map something. If not, pay close attention. So we're going to right click over in the UV editor. If you don't have that open, you can go in, make sure your object's selected, go to UV, go to UV editor. And we can see now that we've got our UVs laid out. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, please do that right now. Right click over the object, over the UV shell, click on UV shell, click on the UV, and you can go in here and rotate that. Also, you can get it kind of started rotating. You don't have to go all the way with it, and then you can go down to Arrange and Layout, and you can click on Orient Shells, and that will orient it perfectly for you. Sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way you want it to, but you know. Then we have our head that we're going to move away, and we're also going to click on Orient Shell, make sure that's oriented. And you can see that whenever I click on something, you can see the shell is represented in the 3D view as well. Okay, you can see how you got that laid out. And this is the arm, so I'm going to go ahead and place that in here. We can also go ahead and orient that shell and do the same thing. We're just kind of basically what we're going to do now is just laying out, just laying the UVs out. We're not packing yet. Let's go ahead and rotate that one a little bit, and then go ahead and orient shell, and that should straighten it up. And then our legs, we'll go ahead and just kind of rotate it a little bit, and click on orient shell. Now for some reason it is angled, so I'm going to go ahead and just do it by hand. Get as close as I can. There's the leg. And let's move that leg over, and let's go ahead and rotate that. Alright, we want to keep them separate. You don't want to lay the UVs on top of each other. That can cause some issues and problems with baking maps if you need to bake maps. Again, I'm just going to kind of just get that rotated, and then we've got the areas where the body. Let's go ahead and orient shell, see if that'll orient properly. That did that one. Oriented that one okay. And the rest is, let's see where we at here. The rest is the hand we have here. Let's go ahead and orient that. Alright, there we go. And we'll orient this one here as well. There we go. Whoops, that one does not want to orient properly. There we go. This takes some finessing. And what do we have left here? Zoom out on that, see what's in there. Do I have some pieces that I didn't want? It looks like I left, the inside of the mouth we didn't cut. So I suppose you could lay that out if you want to. I'm going to leave it as is right now. And what we got here, that's the ear. That looks like a mess right there, so we might have to relook at that. And this ear right here. Okay. And all these other pieces are probably inside of the nose, inside of the mouth, and around the lips. I'm not going to put a whole lot of work into those because those are very small pieces and you don't really see them that much. and or be hidden by other objects. Now the ears are a different story. We do have to look at what happened with the ears. I'm not quite sure what happened with some of that stuff. So other than that, other than the ears, I think everything looks just about right. Okay. So the ears. So what are we going to do with those? Let's go in here. I'm going to close this a minute. Alright, so we see that the ears are separated here. Alright, so what I can do with that is I probably need to have a seam that goes all the way around. Okay, like this. I'm not going to worry too much about the ear. I think the biggest issue, let's go ahead and go back in here and I'll show you how I'm going to recut those ears real quick, and you can watch me do that. Let's go to Edge, and then we're going to go into UVs. We're going to reopen that up, and you can see where we have all these cut. I think what the issue is it really doesn't like all this stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and take that and I'm going to cut around here, if I can get that. Yeah, down around. There we go. So instead of having a cut here, let's go ahead and take that out. There we go. Alright, so I think that's okay now. I'm just doing that. Little piece may help. And I think I'm going to cut this one too as well. There we go. That will probably work a lot better. So I'll do that to the other side. Okay. There we go. We're going to cut this. Do the same thing. Whoops. Alright. Alright, and do we have anything here that should go all the way around? Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, so we recut those, hit the Q key, go back into selection mode, and let's do this. Let's go back into UV. What I don't want to do is, because everything else looks good, and I just laid those out, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to UV shell, just select the ones that I want. I'm going to move those over in here. I'm going to look at, did I get everything in the ear? And it looks like I did for each ear. So what I'm going to do is I'm just selecting those, okay? And I'm going to go into transform. Actually, unfold. Let me go into unfold. And go into unfold and just click on unfold. And that will unfold just the ears. There we go. Okay. So there's the UV shells for these, and that looks good. I'm happy with that. Okay. Alright. So if I wanted to, I suppose I could go in here and move and sew to get those just perfect. So I can go to edge and find the edge on that. And maybe UV and sew that. So I can select these edges here and see if I can move and sew and see if those will work. So move and sew together. There we go. Shell. Okay. And let's go back to edge mode. Alright, and move and sew. There we go. And the rest of it, I'm not exactly sure that will move and sew properly, so I'll leave those. And so I'll do the same thing with this one. Move and sew. I think that'll work. Alright, so now we're going to go to UV shell. And so now everything is good. This one should go over here somewhere probably, right? Let's see here. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get this one in there. Okay. Back to UV shells. And so now we've got the ears completely finished. Now let's take a look at what we have for textile density. What is textile density? It's basically the resolution of the texture, meaning that how much space does the head take compared to the body, compared to the legs. So I've even seen AAA games that have inconsistent textile density maps, texture maps, where the let's say the helmet takes a higher resolution, or they gave it a higher resolution and it looks fantastic in game, but maybe the armband looks terrible in low resolution. So we got to watch textile density and how does that all come to play in to getting it set right. Well, you have to find the biggest area of the character, and it's either going to be the torso, the entire torso, or the leg. And so those are the first places you go. And so to find the textile density, you have to go to UV shell, select the shell you want to kind of go by, the biggest shell, and under transform, you can at the very bottom you'll see textile density, pixels per unit. So I'm going to go click on get, and that's 2.6362. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and set it. Alright, so there hasn't been much of a change here, as you can see with that. And I might even go in here and select everything again and do another unfold, just to kind of loosen things up a little bit more. There we go. And then the last thing I'm going to do is check out, let's go back into where we have, it shows us stretching and compression. Alright, so blue means that there is compression, okay, that is compressing, and then red means stretching. I don't see any really dark, seriously dark blue, so let's show you what that means. So I'm going to go to UVs, right click, go to UVs, and select one UV and just move it in. You can see that if I move it in, it starts turning white, and that means there's no distortion, okay? If you see any color, whether it be blue or red, you start seeing distortion, okay? The more blue that is, the more compression that the UV shows, okay? Alright, mine still isn't very good at getting this correct. So if you want to, you have to go in there and just move things around to where they're perfect, okay? And that just takes some time, okay? And you'll find out that nothing, there's going to be parts where you just can't get it perfect, so you just have to kind of deal with what you have and do the best you can. And you can go in here and move things around until you don't see any red, okay? Right? You have to be careful though, one way or the other can cause issues or problems with that, and you just do the best you can, okay? And that's how you fix them. Alright? Okay, cool. Alright, the next thing we're going to do once you get all that done, make sure everything's good, and make sure you save a lot. Alright? Let's take a look at what the compression and stretching looks like. Okay, so once you get that done, you want to know where your let's go back into object mode. There we go. So in your object mode, we also have, you can also turn off your seams, so you can see where your seams are and how they work and how everything looks. Okay, and then the last thing is the color. Okay, now if you see any red, that means that the UV has flipped. Okay, so you'll just have to go into UV shell and you'll have to flip that around, and you can do that with under translate where it says flip UVs. Okay, right, and that'll flip it for you if you see red, okay, or pink or whatever. Okay, so with that said, now you have all those. That's compression and stretching, and this shows us which direction the UV is. Blue's always good, is facing the right way. And here's just normal shells, and then you got your seam. And you can cut seams anytime you want. Let's just say you're not happy with how you cut the ear, which I'm still not happy with it, but anyway. Or the midsection, you can play with that a little bit more. But let's say you want to cut this section out here. You can easily do that by going into Edge, okay, and just going into the section here, okay. And I can just go to cut UVs and cut. There we go. I can click off and go to UV shell and click on that shell, and that shell is now separated. Okay, now you can put it back on again by either Control-Zing it, or let's just say, let's go in here and I'm going to select all the edges. Okay, whoops. Try to do it in order if you can. It's always a good idea. And you guessed it, just go to Move and Sew. There you go, Move and Sew. Right. It's always a good idea to take the shell and do a quick unfold. You can also do Optimize too, which helps optimize that shell. Okay, so let's go in here. Let's go back, Control-Z. And let's say we've got this on. And I'm going to click on Optimize. Okay, it did help a little bit, so I'm going to optimize the head as well. That does help with the stretching and contraction. The legs really don't have much of anything, or the arms, so that did really well. Okay. The inside of the mouth is horrible, but I'm not going to see that anyway. Okay, so, and I didn't UV map it properly because it's inside anyway. So we're good. Alright, so with that done, we got the textile density, everything's looking good. We want to make sure nothing's overlapping, and I've got a bunch of stuff over here overlapping, your fingers, right? And you may want to texture this with Photoshop, so you're going to have to make sure you lay these, pack these up properly, right? That's super, super important. So I got to make sure nothing is overlapping. And you want to make sure that they're rotated in the right direction. Okay? So you can easily get these painted the way you want to, or texture it the way you want to in a program like Photoshop, or I prefer Substance Painter. That's what I'll be using. But there are some things that you may want to paint or create yourself, like real fingernails, and take a texture and place it in Photoshop. You'd have to go in Photoshop at that point then. Okay, it really depends on what you want to do. Again, make sure pieces are not overlaying on top of each other. That's a bad deal. Not good. Alright. Just make sure you double check all that. Again, we're going to go into Textile Density. Click on the leg, and I'm just going to do this really quick again. Get and set. There we go. Alright, cool. Alright, and just double checking everything. No overlapping on anything. Okay, perfect. Alright, so Udem tiles. Alright, so you watched the video, you know how incredibly awesome Udem tiles are, and I use them basically mainly for textures, as for materials, I mean, as material IDs. Instead of doing material IDs for all this character, I'm going to do Udem, okay, Udem tiles, and use them as material ID maps and bring them into Substance Painter in Module 9. And I also have a basic sci-fi headphone that I did for a character in another class, and I showed you how to lay out the UVs. And I'll show you how to, basically I'll put that in here as well, and that'll be under this one. And that'll kind of give you a segue on how to lay out UVs. Now, one last thing we're going to do, because if we hit the 3 key, let me get everything turned off a minute so you can really pay attention to this. And let's go ahead and look really one last time with this. And the UVs look pretty good. Okay, they're laid out, they're nice and straight, and it looks like everything's unitized properly, and we've got the texture detail correct. Okay, we've got scenes where we don't want them, but you're not going to see them because of the clothes. And I'm not showing her midsections, but if you were, you would make sure you do not put a crease or a seam right there. You do not want to do that. And you could probably have this whole, you could probably just do the legs, right, and leave the rest of it. You could, and you can still do that. You can go in here if you feel like you made a mistake. You can go in here, and I'll show you. It's pretty simple. Go in here, and I could fix that seam just like this, moving so. Okay, and that works just fine. Let's move that shell up now. There we go. And I'll do the same thing with this one here. In fact, I want to do that. Now that I've looked at it, I don't really like what I've done. And this is a great example of, you know, hey, you didn't make a mistake, you're just experimenting. But what if you did make a mistake and you want to change it? You can. Or if you just want to do something different, you can. And that's why it's so easy to do this. So moving so. There we go. Alright, we have some overlapping issues here. Now let's take a look at that. Let's go back. Let's go back a little bit further. There we go. Okay. So what can we do to fix that? Well, we could go in here and do these first, right? You can go in here and select these first. You can see it's selecting those too. Not sure how far we want to go. Down. Maybe down to where you can't see it. Okay, right about there maybe. And one more, maybe. I don't know if that'll work or not. And then we can move and sew those. Move and sew, right? There we go. And then we take this shell, okay, and we rotate it. Again, we're just problem solving all these things out. I'm going to go down to orient shell. There we go. And take a look at this now. And move it out of the way. And that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go in for you. There we go. And let's go to UV shell. Let's go to edge. And let's go ahead and get this taken care of. So now we're just going to go ahead and we are going to sew all of this onto the object, and now we should be good to go. Hopefully. Let's go to moving so, and there we go. And did we still have some? Let's take a look. Might still have some issues. And let's go ahead, because we've done all this work and moved in so. Let's go ahead and rotate around here. Hit the F key, rotate around, and see what kind of issues we're going to have. I'm going to click on this guy right here, and you can see we've got a lot of issues with that. So, what do we do? Well, because we moved in so and some things aren't so great, we're going to go ahead and unfold it again. There we go. It's much nicer. Okay. But this isn't as good as it was before. So maybe I should just leave it the way it is. Or maybe look at cutting edge loops and cutting it in half. But either way, let's go ahead and do optimize that. Hit that a couple times. Okay. And that helps, you know. Again, I'm not really too terribly worried. Let's go click on that. And let's go into the object mode. And let's go into shell and object mode up here. And let's turn this off a minute. There we go. And let's take a real close look. Even though it says it's stretching a little bit, it's not too bad. It's not terrible. If this was a nude, we'd have to get that perfect. We might have to cut seams around the breast and seams around like we had with the legs, right? But since this is going to be part really under the clothes anyway, I'm not really terribly worried. And there's only so many there's only few seams that you can create, meaning that you have to have, there's going to be seams on an organic shape like this somewhere, and you try to, like I said earlier, you try to place them in areas where you can hide them, either by a shirt or by a wristband or a watch or a belt, you know. If this was a bikini line or a bikini, then you would try to find and use, and this is basically built correctly, so you could just follow the loop around where the bikini line would be, and that would be your natural cut you'd have for a seam. Okay, then it wouldn't show. Okay, but I'm okay with this. This is good. All right. So let's turn that off. And so what we're going to do now is that's all done, and what we can do, and maybe what would help is if we did cut underneath here, so that would expand out for the legs. Let's do that right here. Let's make this cut. Let's see if this will help. Maybe not. This part right in here, we're going to cut all the way across, and that will help, I think. Just kind of loosen things up there, and might help with that. So I'm going to cut that. So I'm going to go to cut, so, and then we're going to cut that. Okay, and then we're going to select the shell again, and we're going to go ahead and again click on unfold. There we go. That turned out pretty good. Let's see if that will help. So let's go back to UV shell. And let's go ahead and rotate that a bit where it needs to be, and then orient shell. There we go. I'm going to click off, and let's go into the colors again. Oh yeah, that looks so much better. Down around the bottom part, that looks great. There's hardly any UV stretching there now. So, and the belly looks really great too, so that really helped that. And then I'm going to click on the UV shell, and then I'm going to go ahead and optimize it a couple times. Whoops. And that actually made it worse. Did it? Let's try it again. Just optimize that a little bit. Just clicking, 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 and then until it stops. Okay. Alright, so that's good. Oh wow, that looks fantastic. So we don't literally have nothing, no problems here at all whatsoever. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and click on the checkerboard and make sure everything looks good. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. A lot of trial and error until you get it just the way you want it, and that's okay. Alright, so let's zoom out again and let's go ahead and click off that. And what we want to do now, don't need this full screen, is we need to start packing. So how do we want to pack this? Now, Udemy tiles, what I would do is I would pack the head parts if I was doing regular. Okay, if I was doing regular, you could go in here and lay out the UVs. I'm going to save this so I can come back to it if I make a mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Alright, so let's get this back again. Okay. Close that. Sometimes you have to reopen the UV editor to see your character. Don't freak out if you don't. If you click on your character, you minimize your UVs and then you open them back up again and it's blank. Just click off, just close the UV editor out and then reopen it, and it should be fine. Alright, so the next thing is packing. So you go to your UV shell, click on the UV shell, and start packing. Now you can see the terrible texture space that is wasted. Okay, since I already saved this, watch what happens when I select everything and I let Maya do the layout. Okay, alright, cool. So if I go in here just to make sure, I noticed the shells are a little bit bigger. So Maya basically took the scale of everything and then placed it in the right proportions into the UV layout. So basically what that means is that if I go in here and you can see what I had before, 2.6376, right? I did myself. Then Maya did this. So I click on the head and click on get, and notice that it gave me a better scale resolution, pixels per unit, than I had before, that I did by hand. So Maya basically laid out the UVs perfectly for you, and you could go in with Substance Painter and start painting away. The problem is that we've got issues like this where they're almost touching each other, right? That's no good. That's bad. So let's go back, Control Z back. So what I want to do is I want to manually make sure, or just manually type in stuff that I need, and I would recommend that too. So this is just for a regular UV set. This is not Udemy tiling. So regular UV set, and you basically want to go into Modify, Layout, or Control L, Control plus L. Go into the option box, and in here you basically are going to scroll down to texture size, and you want highest resolution as you can possibly handle, 4096 pixels. Shell padding, that's set at 0. That's bad. It means the shells are touching each other. And I'm going to type in 24U and 24V. There we go. And this is Udemy tiles. Tiles will just have 1 and 1, full square, uniform, yep, and layout UVs. There you go. Now you can see that Maya did a great job. We did have to sacrifice a little textile density, but what's nice about this is if you're in Photoshop, this makes your life a lot easier now. But the bad or the drawback is that it could have flipped your UVs around. Okay. So let me go back in UV shell and let's turn this off a minute. So what I mean is that look at what it did with these finger pieces when I had them all perfect, right? You know, I could, and the thing is, as a human being, I can pack this way better than Maya. There's no doubt about that in my mind. It's just that Maya does a really very quick job. I mean, basically a keystroke and you're done. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was efficiently packed properly. A human being can do way better. We can just, because we're able to reason and see things, and basically Maya is just zeros and ones. Okay. So, and you know, when I texture, I a lot of times I want to cluster these things together. So, let's say I want to put all my fingers over here. Well, Maya doesn't understand that's what I want, so it just does it the best it can. So you have to pack this yourself, okay, and in a manner that makes sense to you and that you can remember, and you know, sometimes you have to take notes about that. Anyway, with that said, that's basically how you pack your UVs. Obviously, I wouldn't pack them like this, like I said, but that is just regular. You would have everything in your UVs. Now, a lot of times students will pack things separately. So let's say, let's go ahead and they cut the head totally off. Okay, it's totally separated. You'd have to extract the head and then give it its own UVs. So I see a lot of this, and that's normal, right? You see a lot of that, and what you'll do then between these two objects, a lot of students will cut all of these UVs, just like I did here, like physically cut and extract these pieces away from the body, and then lay out the UVs. And I've seen students, you know, lay out the body in one UV, right? It'd be in this UV here, and then you lay out the head in this one, and that way, you are basically texturing and giving the textile density a higher resolution. Okay, but I like to use Udom tiling, okay, which gives me a greater efficiency rate, meaning that 14096 map will just be used in a game, okay, or rendering, even though it's separated. And so you can see that I'll be using these tiles over here. Okay, so what you'll do with regular is that you'll extract these pieces. Okay, they have to be extracted, they have to be separated. Okay, and then laid out, the UVs laid out. Otherwise they'll overlap each other. Okay, so you have to extract the pieces, they have to be separated, right? And that can be kind of tricky then when you're putting everything back together, and creating the joints, and the deformation of the mesh can have issues, and weight painting can have issues. So I like to do, like I said, I like to do Udom tiles. So I'm just about ready for that. I know I've been flapping my jaws pretty good. And so what I'm going to do here is just move this back again. I don't want Maya packing anything for me. So I'm going to go back in here as a full figure and go to File, Save, Scene As. And now I'm going to show you how to lay out UVs for Udom tiles in the next video. I'll see you then.